Hear that clinking at the start of Down Under? Colin Hay ain't even opened his mouth yet, and Jerry Speiser's already beating on beer bottles filled with water. No studio trick, just a physics degree, a six-pack, and apparently no better way to spend an afternoon. That song, and the album it's on, made 5 guys from Melbourne famous worldwide. You know the song. You've probably hollered it across a bar more than once. Probably missed a few notes too. But you likely don't know Jerry's name. Melbourne, 1981. Men at work can pack out every pub in the city, and radio still won't touch them. Colin Hay sings and writes the songs, most of them with guitarist Ron Strykert. Greg Ham plays flute and sax in a rock band, which sounds like a terrible idea until you actually hear it. Turns out the flute is the hook. Nobody saw that coming. John Rees holds down the bass, and back on drums is Jerry Speiser, a guy who studied physics and in his spare time apparently tunes beverage containers for fun. Every band needs one. Running the whole operation is one guy, Russell Depeller, Colin's mate from university, sheep farmer's kid from a town called Warrnambool, which might as well be on the moon as far as the record industry is concerned. Russell's never managed a band in his life. What he can do is book pubs, and he's damn good at it.
Hi Russell, how are you, alright?
Bill!
Fixed everything up for you?
Look, Bill!
What do you think of the Allen Retreat?
Bill.
Nice?
Bill!
Oh, great view of the bay, nice and quiet?
Bill,
Great
please.
security, isn't that great?
Bill, the men have got a number of complaints.
The room service is terrible.
Yeah, the food's so bad it's made Ronno crook.
Yeah, and I asked the head porter to bring up my bags and he hit me with a stick.
And there's plenty of bars, but there's nowhere to get a drink.
Every night brings another room, another crowd, and word spreading a little farther down the coast. Nobody in that band thinks the pub circuit is going to be the problem for long. They're right, just not in the way they think. Business as Usual comes out in Australia in November 1981, and it doesn't just do well, it becomes one of the biggest domestic albums the country's ever produced, sitting at number 1 on the Australian charts for weeks. CBS in America isn't convinced. Their A&R department listens to the exact same record and passes on releasing it stateside, twice, because they don't think some Australian pub band is going to translate to American radio. So it sits on a shelf in New York collecting dust, while it's already a phenomenon back home. Somebody finally overrules that call. April 1982, the album gets its American release, and once that door opens, there's no stopping it. It parks itself at number 1 on the Billboard 200 for 15 straight weeks. Who Can It Be Now tops the singles chart, then Down Under comes right behind it and does the same thing.
Why are the Australians taking over the world? What happened to you people all of a sudden?
Well, we used to be fantastic sportsmen, but we don't do so good against the East Germans anymore, so we've taken over music.
By January 83, Men at Work becomes the first Australian act ever to hold America's number 1 album and number 1 single at the same time. Then, they win the Grammy for Best New Artist. They follow it up with Cargo later that year, and that one takes off too. Multi-platinum, another world tour, another year of being everywhere at once. Somewhere in the middle of that tour, on a bus in the middle of America, between shows, Jerry starts doing the math. The math ain't complicated. Russell's a good guy, everybody agrees on that. But he booked pubs in Melbourne, and now he's managing what might be the biggest new band on the planet. Arenas, America, Europe, Japan, the whole circuit. Russell has zero experience with any of it, and Jerry can see the gap clear as day from the drum riser. So Jerry and John Rees go to Colin. Nothing crazy. Put Russell on a salary and bring in some people around him who actually know the business, because this ain't a Fitzroy pub gig anymore. Colin says no. Russell's his mate. That's the whole answer. Years later, Colin lays out exactly why. Jerry and John didn't like Russell. They wanted to put him on a wage because they said he wasn't a real manager. Not about where the band was headed, about Russell's feelings. Jerry doesn't let it go. He even proposes that his own sister step into the management role. Colin, in a 2025 interview, remembers exactly what went through his head. Here's the drummer of the band going up against me. I'm thinking to myself, you're just essentially giving yourself the sack at some point. This is not going to fly. And then Colin blows the whole thing wide open. He admits, flat out, that Jerry probably had a case against him too. I'm sure he would have wanted to sack me as well, because I was a fucking alcoholic, but I sang the songs and wrote them, so he figured maybe that was a bit of a stretch. Jerry had a list. Colin's name was on it. He just couldn't do anything about the singer. The drummer? Different story.
The American tour wraps up in 1984, and word starts going around. Greg Ham's fine, he's staying. Ron Streichert's fine too. Then it gets to Russell, and Russell delivers the news. Jerry's out. Jerry and John Rees get the call. Not needed for the next record. No sit down, no vote. Just a phone call from the manager they'd tried to get replaced. So Russell handles that little problem himself. Jerry says it plain years later. The rhythm section got sacked because they wanted to sack the manager, who was my friend. That's the whole sentence, and it tells you everything about how it went down. Two Hearts comes out in April 1985. Session drummer, session bassist. The third Men at Work album, built without the two guys who actually held the rhythm section down on the record that made the band's name in the first place. It hits number 16 in Australia. In America, it stalls out at number 50. 50. The same band that once sat at number 1 on the Billboard 200 for 15 straight weeks can't crack the top half of the chart 3 years later. Turns out the rhythm section may have been doing a little more than carrying equipment. Ron doesn't even finish the sessions. He's gone before the record comes out. Greg leaves right after. Colin goes solo in early 1986. 18 months start to finish, and the whole band is done.
Meant to go on any longer, you know, and it sort of, I tried to prop it up for a while, but then eventually I thought, oh, you know, you've got to let this go, you know, and I feel much better now because it's better to let something go rather than try and relive past glories, you know.
Colin, in an interview, doesn't dodge it. In retrospect, I think I would have done things a lot differently. Russell doesn't last as his manager either, not long after. Turns out Jerry was right about him. Greg Ham dies in 2012 at 58. His final years eaten up by a lawsuit over the flute riff on Down Under.
Police have all but ruled out foul play in the death of Men at Work's Greg Ham.
John Rees thinks the strain of a controversial copyright case over the flute solo in Down Under took its toll.
Put so much pressure on Greg that I'd say it was probably one of the contributing causes to him being dead right now.
Colin still tours under the Men at Work name today, backed by session players out of Los Angeles. He owns the rights to it, and he's the only original member left standing. Jerry Speiser is 72 now, living in Melbourne, running a consulting business that, and you cannot make this up, helps companies figure out who in the room is in over their head. Safe to say he's had some experience. And somewhere in the world, right now, Down Under is playing on the radio. It still starts with the sound of beer bottles.